Oh yeah, how about now? That's how we do it. That is how we do it. How we doing? That's what I thought. So, welcome to a Tech Wednesday video that I don't have a video out particularly, but I'm going to talk and answer some questions for some people in regards to cars and technology and explain what you're going to see next week. I would first like to see how everyone in the comments section, people that are chatting, really quick. I want to know how you are. I want to know just how smooth everything's going for you. I'm gonna type all caps, all caps. So I'm going to talk about some things. First, I'm going to just take a look at all these initial comments like curly fries and onion rings. Curly fries are usually the go-to unless I'm really feeling down on life, and then I'll throw back some onion rings. All right, so here we go. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming in here and enjoying yourself in a live performance, because today I'm going to show you something here. I've found the cure for a lot of diseases. That is a banana Twinkie wrapper. And what it does is it binds to every part of your body. And what it does is it adds a little bit of heft. It adds just an extra layer of padding to protect you in some of the most dire conditions. And I found that after going through about 2 boxes of these, mentally and physically, I've gotten more weak. But I seem to be just feeling a lot better about everything else. So let's get into what we're going to talk about today. I have some questions about technical stuff that I'm going to answer first, and then I'm going to go into the comment section and start responding to a lot of the hot items that people have to talk about. So let's get into this. I'm going to bring up the questions right now, don't worry, because I can't remember them. All right, the first one it relates to automotive technology, and they wanted to know the difference between the ZL1 1LE or the Corvette's ELSD, okay? And they wanted to know the difference between that and kind of a torque vectoring differential or electrohydraulic actuated differential. So I'm going to explain this in a very high level because there's so many different types of differentials that different manufacturers make. So if you go to Chevy, they make their own ELSD. And what that is a set of electrohydraulic multi-plate clutches that can reduce and increase the amount of torque to the rear wheels when you need it. And I think the main thing I wanted to explain about some of these differentials is you basically have an open diff on a basic car. I just did a Camry TRD. You hit the gas and whatever wheel breaks traction continues to spin. So it's not mechanically it can't transfer the power to the wheel that has the most grip, and that's why you would go to a mechanical limited slip, which is like a Torsen. So that would basically eliminate all the problems with one wheel peel. You'd have a mechanical LSD, and it would transfer power to the one that needs it versus to the one that's just spinning wildly and creating all this weird torque steer. So personally, I think for street cars, mechanical LSDs are the best because it's basically an on and off switch. There's no electronics. There's no logic to it. It's just, okay, I'm spinning a wheel, the clutch locks up and it transfers the power, and that's easy to design, easy to develop, and you don't have all these systems that are tied to it. And then you get to something like a Haldex or the ELSD where it's all like electronic. The Corvette system is ridiculous, which is also on the Camaro. And it's tied into so many things in the car that when you're driving it, literally the system is no longer you're no longer in control of what's happening to those rear wheels. So if you're turning the wheel too much, the computer is looking at that steering wheel angle sensor, and it's like, okay, I'm going to adjust the amount of torque based on the way that the wheel is turned based on tire temperatures. Now they're adding in tire temperatures. So if the tires are cold, it's going to it may go into more of a lock mode to send power to both sides equally. So there's this huge variance based on conditions, and it will never be the same twice. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of these newer cars, the newer sports cars specifically, it's a strange and disconnected driving experience on a lot of them because they become so capable from all the electronics, but you have all these different layers that get stacked upon the driving experience that the ECUs, the wheel speed sensors, all these sensors all over the car are constantly working to make these minute and fractional adjustments to your drive. So it's no longer just I push my foot down and I get power sent to the rear, and I lift off, the power comes off. It's not like that anymore. It's just, again, stacked in all these layers, and that's the way kind of ELSDs work. It's the way that some of the Haldex systems work for all-wheel drive. It's kind of doing the same thing. It's kind of electronically slipping on and slipping those clutches, but it's electrohydraulically actuated. There's a pump that uses fluid to make that transition more smooth. And that's the problem with mechanical LSDs like a Torsen. Since you don't have any of that, it's just, I'm losing traction, lock. So the S2000 is a good example. The car's kind of twitchy, but when you turn and you start to break traction, that LSD locks, and you feel this like shunt, this shake that you think, if you don't understand how it works, you feel like you are going to oversteer the car because it has that lock effect. With the multi-plate clutches that have electrohydraulic actuation or electromagnetic actuation, it can progressively engage that clutch so you don't feel this like unstableness to it. But again, the computer decides on how much torque or how much lock or unlock of those clutches that it applies. And then you get into torque vectoring differentials, which can literally freewheel one wheel or basically decouple one side or the other and can send power to both. So the problem with the torque vectoring differentials is they're heavy. They're big, they're complicated, they're heavy, and they're good for big, heavy all-wheel drive cars, kind of like the BMWs. Audi can use it. You're seeing it in the Lexus products. Now Toyota used it. Toyota used it in their Lexus products, but now they're putting it in cars like the Highlander has a torque vectoring differential at the high option. So it gives you a ton of flexibility in terms of transferring power to each wheel. But, you're adding weight, you're adding complexity, and they're not really rated. That's why you'll see trucks, real trucks, you don't have these types of differentials in them because they can't take extended periods of load, much like on-demand systems. If you're constantly breaking traction and you're spinning the rear wheels with these on-demand setups, the ECU will say, no, I'm no longer sending the power to the back or to the front based on the car. It will shut down the power, kind of like the Focus RS. It's using kind of a simulation to say, okay, I've sent too much power to the rear for too long. I'm going to shut that power down. And that's the problem with some of these like weaker systems. But let's be real, most people don't drive cars in a condition where you're going to break traction like that. So again, most of the newer systems are all electronic. And from a regular driver standpoint, they make for an amazing experience. But from performance cars, they keep adding more layers. That's the longest answer possible. I'm not going to get into any more of the mechanical stuff because you'll just fall asleep. The next question was, well, actually, a lot of those questions had to do with that. The next one is, what's up with the new Lotus supercar? And I don't really talk about supercars because I'm not really that interested in it, but Lotus specifically, since I owned one, I think it's funny that they haven't had anything. Literally, they've had the Evora that's been refreshed, 20 times. They pretty much, you can't get a new Elise or Exige in the States. Then all of a sudden, they announce this the most high-end sports car, exotic car ever. And it's like, really, you go from basically having no product to having this crazy thing. And personally, I don't know what's up with that company. It's like the weirdest company ever. I would like to see more real cars from them other than these strange things. And they just had this press release how their online configurator to configure their new hypercar is designed by a video game manufacturer. So when you design your car online or design your car with this tablet, you get, perfect, smooth, three-dimensional, or, scaling to see around the car and all this rendering. It's just so stupid. Like, I would just love to see a real car from them, or like, not something that is completely ridiculous. But that's what I think about that. I have a couple more questions that are from Patreon, and I'm gonna go there right now, and you're gonna sit here and just twiddle your thumbs, because that's what you're gonna do. Let me bring up a web browser here for you. Okay. That's high tech. Yep, real high tech. All right. Patreon. Here's the next questions. This is Sebastian. I've always wondered about warming up a car. The rule of thumb seems to be you shouldn't push your car until it reaches 194 degrees Fahrenheit or 90 degrees Celsius, but as someone who daily drives a sporty car, it's rather unspecific, especially what is considered pushing. I try to stay below 2 to 2500 RPMs for warming up, but it's a rather low ceiling. And should you let your motor warm up before you start driving? Lastly, should you cool down your car after a sporty drive, not pushing it? On the last few miles, letting the motor run for a minute. So, yeah, and he acknowledges the fact that, there's no one size fits all. Every motor, every transmission, every mechanical system has some unbelievable restrictions based on its design, based on oiling design. So typically, if you have a more high performance motor with tighter tolerances and a thicker oil grade, something like we talked about with BMWs, it runs 1060. Like the Mustangs run a heavier weight, the GT 500, GT 350s. And then you have the Vets that run a heavier oil weight, Ferraris, all that. And they run a heavier oil weight most of the time because they can hold up to higher temperatures. So if you have a car that has, thick oil, it takes a lot higher operating temperature before that oil can thin out, can get into everywhere it needs. And then you also have metals that need to be up to temperature. You have expansion and contraction of metals. You have the seals, you have the flex, all of that. So the rule of thumb is, like, obviously, if your engine and cooling system, including oiling and cooling, are not up to that window, I would say about 160 degrees Fahrenheit is that right on that entry level window. Once you get beyond that, pretty much everything is heated up. And the main thing is oil temperature. And coolant temperature is completely separate from oil temperature. They don't follow the same chart. Your coolant will always hit a higher temperature first than your oil. So for me, if you have a sports car, I really let it, start it up. If it's hot outside, like above 70 degrees, start it up and just start driving. Just put it through, let the transmission get up to temperature, let the engine get up to temperature for like 10, 15 minutes, and then you're really ready to go. In terms of like a lot of these newer cars that have eco oils, which is 020 or 016 and soon 0W8. It's so watery. It still needs to get up to temperature, but not like it used to. So you could get away with pushing that oil at like 130, 140 degrees because it's already moving around everywhere it needs to. But you still, just because that oil's up to temperature doesn't mean all the internal components, all the parts mechanically are at that even temperature threshold. So of course, everything has that window. It's like going out, if you're standing outside in the freezing weather, like you're sitting there in like 30-degree weather Fahrenheit and your body is freezing cold, it's so uncomfortable to go running flat out if all your joints, wrists, knees, ankles are all, they're all cold. Your circulation's not moving around. So it's the same concept. Your body, it's just, you need to get things warmed up to have everything working properly. And I know it's a bad example, but mechanically, a lot of it is the same. You don't just want to take some cold steel or aluminum part and just go ramrodding it flat out. And the same thing with cool down. If you get the oil temperature up to like 240 and everything, this thermal expansion's there, everything's scalding hot, and you go from boiling hot to just flat out cold, it's bad in that way too, specifically for brakes. That's how brakes warp. That's how you get a lot of heat cycling, heat checking in metals. And then the same thing with tires. Compounds are very sensitive to that constant heat cycling. Rubber heats to an extreme level. You get it to that window where it's best for operating temperature. You go park that car, you let those tires get totally bone cold, and you go out and get them hot again. That's where you start to put all that heat stress and heat cycling in the compounds. And granted, metals are not like rubbers, but there's a lot of the same concepts in there. So long story short, progressively get your car up to temperature, let it get in that window. If you get it to extreme temperatures, let it cool back down to normal temperatures, and then let it cool off progressively. You never want to go to these extremes. I'm trying to think here. There's not a lot of Patreon comments because I just posted this up yesterday. So I think that's pretty much it for right now. So let's get on to kind of the Tech Wednesday stuff. So next week I'm going to be doing a video about mobile computing or workstations, kind of like IT shit, because everybody's at home. And there's a huge thing about what's the best equipment for working from home in terms of mobile devices, tablets, Microsoft Surface. If you're a creator like I am, or in like engineering, you almost want to have a full blown machine that you can do everything and go. If I hate having a desktop now where I literally tied to it. If I want to go in the living room and just sit there and work, I don't have to be stuck to a desk. So a lot of this is going to be talking about how things have evolved for me working on all this stuff. I'm going to show like the mechanical and engineering part of why the things are built the way they are, and the disposable nature of consumer electronics versus enterprise, or how do I put this? Yeah, more enterprise equipment. And I'm going to kind of show where the differences are with the different kind of equipment and get more into that. And that's obviously, it's not going to be a live stream. It's going to be a real video. And then I'm going to show kind of why I use the stuff that I do and some of the benefits of it. But anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that right now. I'm going to get into some of these comments and, take a look at what people have to say here. Thanks for bearing with me for those first long ones. So fact of the matter, donated $2. Now that is serious business. Thank you. And I appreciate that. Let's get into some of the questions here. Since when did the Shelby GT, since you did the Shelby GT350, do you ever plan on reviewing the GT500? Yes. And that's not going to come from Ford, more than likely. That might come from Tri Industries, and I do not. I'm not really sure when, with everything that's going on, but yeah, I plan to do it. I wonder how many people will use 2,000 horsepower of the Avora or whatever it's called. Yeah, nobody. Yeah, I tend to not use Google for search engine usage anymore, and it's really kind of. It's more of a personal choice, but at the same time, I'm using Gmail. I'm using Gmail for business. So basically everything that's in my email, they already have some type of log for that. I'm on YouTube, which they have basically my entire life recorded. So they have so much already. And technically they should be able to get my searches from other web browsers. I think it's basically they've become spyware or malware to the point where they have everything anyway. So if I'm using my phone, I typically leave as much Google stuff off of it as possible. All the things that you can do as a user, I try to be as secure as possible. But yeah, reducing your web searching, not putting everything, giving them everything is probably a good thing, but whatever. Scotty Kilmer, I don't really watch him. I don't really watch him. I've seen some of his videos. The guy seems like he's definitely some videos are good. Some just somebody said he sounds like he's drunk, and it could be. I mean, the guy could just be going on a bender before he releases a video. What else we got? FCA is the most reliable. I'll tell you a story about FCA stuff. So we had the Compass video that came out, and that was not probably the best video to release because it was a press car and we were kind of dicks about it. And, when you're dealing with a manufacturer, you have to kind of be careful how you word things, and that was just a free-for-all of pushing absolutely the boundaries of what was acceptable. So I brought up either in that video or the Ram video how my buddy Gary, he had bought a brand new Ram and he's had it in the shop 5 times in like under 10,000 miles. And he was just at his wit's end. And FCA's like, dude, why are you bringing that up? You could probably do it more politically correct. And they were right, because I'm calling them out and not giving them the opportunity to respond. And I will say this about FCA, they will get you if I have a real question about a product, if I have a problem about failures, reliability, functionality, they're one of the few manufacturers that will get me engineers to talk about the stuff. They will get me who I need to, so they have the opportunity to respond. So I'm not just going out there and spewing stuff. And that was bad on me for not contacting them and being like, hey, this is kind of the issues I have. Can you address them? Or at least give them the opportunity to address them. And one of the reasons why I didn't is because I don't think that in terms of the Compass specifically, and some of these like shit boxes that they make, they're just not the best products. And I think they know they're not the best products. And there's not much to say. What am I going to say? Like, why do you make this garbage? Which is really kind of what that video came down to. But it's really not fair. It's completely biased. So the resolution is, if I have a product that I really don't like and it's a press car, I either have to reword what I'm saying or not do a video on it, because it really affects things professionally. Let me just put it that way. But FCA did go to bat. They did step up, and they were able to help out in the case of somebody that had issues. So I will say they are definitely one of the best in terms of, even if their products have some issues, the people that are there typically stand behind what they're doing. And all those people that work on this stuff have been there for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a rant, but that's the deal with that. All right. What cars are you going to review next? All right, this is a bad topic because with the virus, pretty much a lot of companies are pulling cars from the fleets. So FCA's pulled some of theirs. Ford and Lincoln have pulled theirs, and of course they pulled it the day I was supposed to get one. VW and Audi are pulling theirs. So they're going into full-blown like liability / hoarding cash mode. And the companies that have cars left, at least in my area, are Hyundai, Kia. They're full-blown, like just whatever you want. And Toyota, Lexus. they have the most resources, they have the most support, and they are the best off financially to do that. So a lot of the cars that I have coming up, aside from viewer cars, are going to be in that vein, and it's going to get really annoying. I know, and I know I'm going to have to figure out how to break it up. So that's kind of the state of that. As soon as this stuff gets lifted, I think they'll look at fleets again, but that's the deal. I will have the new 2020 Supra or 2021 Supra, whatever, the one with the new motor. And I know everybody now, they're getting it ahead of time and they're racing to get a video out, but there's an embargo. You can't talk about driving impressions. And so people are just racing videos out and not really having any information in them. So I'm not going to rush to get mine out. I'm going to actually release it with the information that people need. So that's the deal with that. Davis, I hope you take a shower. I trust a new system from Toyota before a 2-year-old system from GM. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. It's just basically how your company is designed. Quality, vetting, money, budgets, all that. Thoughts on ND1 versus ND2 Miata RF? I am not a crazy car person, but I love driving. Just get the ND2. It's what the car was supposed to be. And the motor is far better and more fun to drive. Unless you could get an unbelievable deal. If it was like $10,000 less for an ND1 or something, then I would do that. But if you had the choice up front, just take the ND2. Where the heck is Turbowski? This is one of the most asked questions in the comments all the time. Scott's got his life, and I have mine, and that's it. I mean, I'm in a different direction in my life than he is, and he is always like he works all the time, and he's not really into this car stuff that I'm doing, and that's it. So that's all I'm gonna say. Are you getting the new Nissan Sentra? Yes, I will. Yes. That's some low LOW viscosity. What's the oil pressures normal with these watery oils, and every engine's different. So you could take one motor and it could have an oil pressure of 100 psi at cold start, and you get into another one at a 70, and your normal operating temperatures could be totally different from one motor to the other, despite it having the same oil grade in it. So a lot of that is, if you're going to look at it from a performance perspective, you'd look at like a 10W20 or 0W20, and you'd look at the oil pressure at its normal operating temperature. And then you look at it at its highest operating temperature. So let's say 190 versus 240. And if the service manual will give you the information of what the oil pressure should be given a specific RPM, then you can really look at that data and say, okay, if I'm operating outside of this range, I know my oil pressure is way too low on this oil versus where it should be, and then you adjust your oil grade based on that information. It's not an exact science, but again, every car that I've tested, it's something I really look into, and most of them are vastly different. So I know that doesn't really answer your question, but that's it. Dan W., Mark, you warmed me up. I'm glad, because it's friggin' cold in here. How does Todd get to operating temperature? He drinks Molson Light, and he definitely tries on different slacks. He likes going through different slacks, different types of khakis, and when he's drinking his Molson Light, he really heats up. So, GT350, was that a real question? People ask me all the time, what do I think about the GT350? And I think, again, I always say the same thing. It's one of my favorite cars that I would never buy, especially in retrospect. I got to see it when it was new. I got to experience everything that was good about it. And then I got to experience what people go through when they own it and drive it. And every time we go to a track, every time we go somewhere where somebody really drives that car hard, they're on their second motor or their second motor's having problems. And I've seen it too many times that I would ever consider buying one of those. Thanks for the second Durango SRT review. Enjoyable. Ram TRX question. How do you think the four-wheel drive Hellcat will work on that 1500 body? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I feel like it's going to be kind of a rubbery mess that will be completely electronically hampered and controlled, because they're going to need to electronically control that system on that car or truck, because otherwise it's going to be a disaster. I think it will be an unbelievably fun product. It's another one of those. It's got the same thing that the Hellcats and the GT350s have going for it. It's like a truck that has insane sound, engine noise, exhaust noise, and the fact that you could probably put it into a tree. What else could you ask for? I mean, really, that's what's fun about those things. When you strip away all the things like, oh, what kind of problems you're going to have, you're not buying it for that. You're buying it for the sheer joy of when it's working and you're able to go crazy. It's the most fun you can have. And that's why you would buy it. But yeah, we're supposed to go to the launch for that. And we'll have, I haven't trashed my relationship with them, we'll have access to all the engineers and stuff to talk about it. When are you going to do Tesla? This year. I will have a charger put in for those piles and all the EVs, which I didn't do because I didn't want to spend the money. And I haven't wanted to spend the money for something that I don't typically get out here. But EVs are definitely something that needs to be done. I just put it off. Hey Goose, which Mustang GT trans option is the most reliable, manual or the manual 6 or the auto? I personally, if it were me getting a Mustang, it has to be the manual, and the manuals are fairly reliable if you're not a monkey. And I saw Jack do things with that transmission that I've never seen anybody do before, and it's because I think it was like his first experience with that car, and two, it was fun to ramrod it, but that's exactly what breaks those. So if you're really careful, the 6 speeds will hold up really well. You just got to make sure you use the right trans fluid, make sure it's in the right temperature, just don't abuse it. Let's see. Hopefully, President Donald J. Trump gave him his nice $1,200 check today. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about the checks, man. I don't know about all that stuff. It's a very strange place to be with all the stimulus, and the one that really makes me laugh is all the people in the cities that are like boycotting rent. It's like, I'm not going to pay my rent. And then it's like, if you're a landlord or something, like, okay, how do you pay your bills if people think they shouldn't have to pay rent? This is one of the most, it's going to be one of the best social studies experiments ever, about all the things that are going on with this, from the silliness of like toilet paper to people clearing out the entire cases of hot dogs. Seriously, dude, like, holy shit. I'm not going to survive. I need every hot dog package. It's just, people are absolutely nuts. There was something, my buddy Mike, he messaged me today. He's like, there was a 55 car pileup on the Kennedy Expressway in Chicago today because it snowed like a fingernail's worth of snow, and there was a 50 car pileup in Illinois. And of course it's like 25 degrees out here again, and Fahrenheit, in the middle or the end of April. So, I mean, it's just people, if you can just somehow switch your brain to understand it's just comedy, a lot of this stuff, it's amazing. Oh, one more story and anecdote before I get to questions. I was driving back from the shop to my place last night, and there was a red light, and there was there was a Ram 1500 with LEDs all over it. He was stopped at the light, and it was red in the left lane, and I was coming up in my Avalon TRD, so I'm tough as nails. He's sitting here at the light, and I'm coming up, and I'm seeing the light change, so I'm just like, because it goes into a 1 lane road for like 10 miles after that, and everybody goes slow. So I saw it changing, and I just gunned it to get in front of him because I didn't want to get stuck behind him. So what does he do? Because I got in front of him and I was already going like 15 over the speed limit, he's on my ass with his brights on because I got in front of him. That was it. That's all it was. So I turned into a left turn lane to let him by because, you know, it's these mental games with people. I got behind him and I turned on my brights just to be an asshole, just to be like, hey, you want to get in front of me? Go in front of me. But I'm going to turn on my brights. And then I turned them off in like 10 seconds. And I just gave him space because I really didn't care. And then he was going. He was going basically the speed that I wanted to go. But it was like we got to the next light after like 10 miles and he's sitting there and he wouldn't look at me at the light. Of course, like I was looking over and it was dark. I was looking over. I was waiting for him just to acknowledge something. Nope. So it's like this animal thing that people do. It, like they, I could probably be 1,000 years old and I'll never understand it. So anyway, let's get back to the questions. There's some people that are paying money here. Mr. Pink, which minivan do you prefer, Honda Odyssey or Chrysler Pacifica? As of today's date, I would take the Pacifica, but I would absolutely have to have a warranty. I think the Pacifica, it's on its own architecture. It's on its own platform, and nothing else is shared with it. It was a dedicated platform for that van, and all the flexibility of what they can do with it in terms of cargo capacity, storage, the ride quality is good. The V6 is pretty reliable. The trans is iffy. It no longer has the feel of a minivan. And like the updates they did to it just now with the new infotainment, a lot of the software stuff that they've updated with the refresh, it's really enjoyable to drive. It's really enjoyable to drive. Honda has problems with VCM, and granted they fixed a lot of this, but like Scott talks about, motor mounts are expensive. They have built-in ECUs to motor mounts. Like their trans still have weird issues. But you know, the only thing I'll say about the Odyssey is if you're buying it to keep it, it has a way better resale value. I mean, basically the Pacifica's tank. Like, so if you can buy a Pacifica fully loaded, and I was looking at these, you can find one for like mid-20s. Like literally mid-20s with low miles and get it CPO'd and it'll be amazing. But the values of them tank. But I definitely prefer the Pacifica. Ron said, thanks for the great content. Just showing gratitude. Thanks, buddy. This $4.99 is going to get me right to McDonald's or buy more Twinkies. Kiefer Snell, thoughts on best implemented start-stop system and best cylinder deactivation system currently. Will cylinder deactivation be here to stay, or is it a passing fad in smaller engines for cylinder variety? So I drove the Camry and the Avalon TRD, and they both don't have cylinder deactivation, and it's so weird because certain cars do, certain cars don't. I think all of them will have them if the current emissions and fuel economy standards stick. It's going to be a software integration, but there are better ways. So if you're using a starter-based, like a traditional mechanical starter to spin a motor up, those are the worst. Like the Subaru is the worst. It's like archaic. I know why it's there, but it shouldn't be there. And then you have companies like Audi and BMW, well, Audi specifically, they have their own lithium-ion battery to spin the belt off the alternator. Well, I think it's a BAS system. So the lithium-ion battery exists purely to crank that belt to start the engine up without a starter. And the byproduct is it's insanely smooth. So out of all of them, I would say the Audis right now, and just off the top of my head, are by far the smoothest. But look at all the complication you're adding just to stop that thing. Like it's just so stupid to me that you have to do that. And where it makes sense, and start-stop makes sense in congested countries or congested cities where you're sitting there nonstop all day. It doesn't make sense when you're more suburban areas where you're not sitting parked for extended times, where it's constantly, you're rolling and then it's cutting out the engine on a roll. It's very, very annoying. But again, why does this stuff exist? These manufacturers wouldn't be putting this stuff in here if it wasn't for some of the regulations. There would be no interest in developing and all this engineering cost. So anyway, I'm just going on a rant about that. What else we got? Have you seen any issues with the K20C1 with carbon buildup? I'm not seeing anything, but then again, I don't own the car. I feel like depending on how you drive it and how much oil is getting in there with blow-by, I think the newer, companies are starting to figure this out a little bit more than they did when the direct injection was first out, because when DI was first out, they weren't mainstream. A lot of these engine designs, the head designs, weren't mass market. Now they know, at least, let me just put it this way, they know how to engineer it to the point where it will make it through the warranty without having severe issues with misfires or buildups. And I've talked to many companies now that talk about their DI design, and a lot of it is electronic control, not only electronic control, head design, valve design, because you have sodium filled valves. There's a lot of thing about temperature and having carbon buildup, baking on the valves and the heads. So there's ways to reduce that based on how you're controlling a lot of the electronic systems, ignition, combustion, and now that you have so much electronic control of this, it's gotten easier for them to make the things last longer without having buildup. Now, the truth is there's always going to be buildup. It just may not be as excessive as it used to be. Yeah, William, I answered your question on the TRX. I think earlier on, if you didn't hear it, I just basically said it's going to be amazing. I just hope that it's not going to be totally electronically limited and you're still going to be able to kill yourself in it. But I'm really excited for that because it's going to be so stupid. All right. Even my quad-core MacBook 15 has crazy thermals when doing a Zoom call. So this is stuff I'm going to talk about with Tech Wednesday stuff when I do kind of the first video with the Dell shit. So, this is one of the things, right? So this is a precision workstation. And basically this is designed for engineering, creative design, and all of these things, and me and Jack talk about this, the MacBook Pro, it's still a machine that is completely compromised, much like cars. It's a machine that's compromised for aesthetic and size. And to make that small form factor, you still have to deal with heat. The CPUs, GPUs, they generate a lot of heat. Now with solid state or NVMe drives, they get hot. If you're using a lot of I/O, fast I/O, they get really burning hot. So they're even throttling themselves. So the point is, there's only so much you can do in a thin design. So in machines like this, the cooling ports are insane. So the entire lower body, so this is an example. This whole lower plane comes off here so you can get to things easily. They have magnesium panels for heat dissipation. And then, sorry. Get this shit off. Now it's already off. So this entire lower plane here is all about moving air from the inside to the back, and they have redundant fans. And this is the stuff that a lot of people don't think about when you're doing real work on laptops. If you don't have a cooling system, you can't run the processors and the GPUs at their full speed. And even this machine with all the cooling, the engineers said that we have to throttle GPU speeds because still, even with dual redundant fans and the high speed that those fans can go, it's still just physically, mechanically can't get enough airflow to cool down those processors enough to run it at its full clock potential. So there's always this 5% reduction. Now that's a big ass machine. You go to something thinner, you have these tiny ass fans. Yes, they may have the specs that say, okay, I can run at X speed, blah, blah, blah. But once you reach that temperature threshold of that and you can't cool it any further, it's constantly throttling. It's constantly throttling, and that's how they get these smaller machines to work. And it's no different than what, like, and we talk about this with car stuff, you know, like the WRX is a perfect example. The tuning on that car, it's constantly pulling timing, right? It's pulling timing based on temperature, and a lot of cars do this, performance cars, based on fuel quality, temperature of oil, temperature of coolant, just basically system parameters are like, okay, the car makes 240 horsepower. Now I'm way too hot. I'm going to cut timing. I'm going to cut this, that, and the other. And now it's only making 200 horsepower, especially with turbo cars, because they're getting too hot. And the best way to manage that power output is controlling power. So it's the same shit with computing stuff. And, you know, I don't think people have a good grasp on a lot of it. They pay a lot of money for stuff and they don't really understand what it's doing or why they need it. But yeah, every industry is the same. What else we got? Okay, we got more questions. Mark, unless I missed it, I don't think you've ever reviewed Tesla products. Do you have any off-camera exposure to 3? Yes, I've driven the 3, and I will do videos on the Teslas in the next 4 months, I promise. It's definitely a goal of mine to do. Anyway, I'm not going to explain it much more than that because I think I'm not going to really make any sense right now. Mark, Mr. Pink, my last donation to you today is gratitude for your channel. You've been making amazing reviews. Keep it up. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's super important to me to continue doing this, even though, like, the money is completely evaporated right now with everything that's going on, but I feel grateful that I can continue. Even if I'm not making money, I can still work. A lot of people can't work or lost their jobs, and their jobs may not even come back. And it's really shitty. I hope that when this stuff is over, people are not going to be stressed out, because it's one thing to be afraid for, like, health. It's another thing to be afraid to feed your family, and not be able to know if you're gonna have a roof over your head. To me, that's always been my biggest thing. And hopefully everybody's doing well with that. Scott, just bought a 2020 Veloster N performance package. I pick it up on Friday. What do you suggest looking for or paying attention to before I drive it off the lot? Known issues, anything to keep in mind? Look at the body. Specifically, if it's new, make sure there's not, a shitload of miles on it right off the bat. Just look over the body really well and make sure that it wasn't repainted or damaged or anything, weird scratches, that the dealer, before you take delivery of it, make sure that body looks great. Then if you can, ask the dealership just to throw it on a lift, just for the hell of it. Make sure there's no leaks, anything strange about it, nothing loose. And then when you drive it, just really make sure when you're driving it, that first, Hyundai products are notorious for this, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but when a car is new, like at that 6 to like 25 mile range, the ECU is still learning like fuel trims. So the fueling and the way that the ECU is doing fueling, it tends to run more rich. The other thing is drive-by-wire programming is not sorted out yet, so there's like linearity tables, right? So you push down the throttle, halfway it should be 50%, but that's not really the way that the software does it. So when you first drive that car, 50% may feel like 10% as it's building all this data, and all that stuff is working. So one, power may not feel right, fuel economy may feel like shit, which is like, I just got out of the Sonata Hybrid before it was, I guess I didn't have any information on it, but we were getting horrible fuel economy because it was still going through all its fuel trim learning process and all that. And it took some miles for the car to really feel like it was normal. So that's one thing I would say. Let the thing get up to temperature, progressively get up to temperature, drive it, vary the RPM, just make sure everything feels right. Make sure that that manual trans is heated up before you start really, going hard, and just give it like a track day. Basically, if you're going flat out for 20 minutes, you don't just want to come in at maximum temperature and let it go cool off cold. You want to like bring down the temperatures gradually. So do that more, be more cautious of that while it's new. But I'm not aware of any catastrophic issues with trans or motor. Just kind of be nice to it. Mark, new Supra or used 911 of similar price? Well, that's all on how much money you have to take care of it and do maintenance because the 911 is going to cost way more to do maintenance on unless you're really handy. Doing simple things on a 911, as much as they are reliable, are not the same as doing something on a Supra. You know, a Supra, it's like working on a Toyota, well, Toyota inspired BMW. So you're still going to have simple things to do with that. So my recommendation is if you have a limited budget and you want a sports car, I would probably take a Supra right now. And I know that's weird, but if you have a lot of money, then get a 911 because it's a better car. Cruising RSX, thank you for what you do. Need a subcompact Mini S versus Honda Fit EXL manual or auto, just a city runabout. As much as the new Fits kind of irk me because initially when they came out, their quality was horrible because they moved them to Mexico. A lot of these subcompact cars now suffer from quality, but I will give the Fit this. It is pretty reliable mechanically. The manual, if you can find one, is solid, and it gets great fuel efficiency. Well, good fuel efficiency, and the configurability of the interior for a city runabout is one of the best in the industry. It's really, really good. So I would take that way over a Cooper S any day. Cardinal Glick 57, Mark, thank you for the content question. Have you seen or heard anything about the next generation Grand Cherokee? Not really, other than I know that they're moving to the Alpha platform, which I don't even know what it's called right now. I can't remember. So they're going to be doing a long wheelbase version of that architecture, which will be the basis for all the new performance products. So they've had to rescale the body, extend it out to be able to fit 4 poppers, 6-cylinder, and V8s. I would love to see how it is. Absolutely love to see how it is. GLHS 178, new G70 2-liter with manual trans or Accord 2-liter with manual trans for a daily family car. Well, the straight answer to that is the Accord is an amazing car, but it's front-wheel drive. And it's a 4-cylinder turbo that has the same problems that a lot of these other cars do. They don't feel good when you drive them hard. The G70, the Accord 2-liter is a better motor, but the G70 is rear-wheel drive, and it's on a rear-wheel drive architecture. So that immediately makes it feel much more substantial. It's a way more engaging driving experience. While it may not have some of the things the Accord does on its interior space, I personally, if you had a similar price tag, I would take a G70 over it in the 4-cylinder segment. Let's take a look at some other shit because I know I probably missed a lot here. What else we got? Ryan, love your work along with Jack. Some of the best car content on YouTube. Yes, I'm trying. I definitely try. Goose One is the Corvette review coming out. I'm bored at work trying to buy time here. I'm going to get that from a third party. I doubt I'm going to get it from GM, but there will be one this year. I'm in the Schaumburg, Illinois area. Is Todd's shop local? Todd no longer runs his own shop. He works for a company. NVIDIA versus AMD, depends on what you're doing. For what I do, NVIDIA is far superior. But in other areas, AMD is far more cost efficient and in some ways better for what you're, depending on, again, it's about what your usage case is. We got more of these. Man, I can't even. I want to say her name right so bad. Chandrit, $6. Great content, Mark. Thank you. Appreciate it. Jeff, Adam, Stinger owners say adaptive cruise control is jerky, especially up mild hills. Info. Could you look into it? I rely on ACC due to nerve pain, and this would kill the kill the deal. That's a good question because you got to remember too that adaptive cruise control relies on all these sensors, but it's also drive-by-wire related. So, like if you're in sport mode, the linearity of drive-by-wire changes. So sudden throttle inputs are more jerky because it's more reactive to throttle pressure. And I found that's one thing I found on certain cars that if you're using adaptive cruise control, I always put in like eco mode because the throttle linearity is lower, so you can push it down and nothing happens. But I haven't tested the Stinger to do that. If I do get another one, I will try it. TMA 2290 put a little emoji. This says some little lady with pink hair. It says you're number one. Oh, how sweet. All right, let's get back to questions. Thanks for that. Mr. Pink, what vehicle are you reviewing next? That's the BMW X1 is coming out next. That's going to be off the chain. Yeah, NVIDIA is greedy like Intel for sure. Tesla market cap is greater than Volkswagen, BMW, and GM combined. Your thoughts, please. They're a hot product. They're hot. It's this. You've seen this in industry. Some of the most popular products or most polarizing yet captivating CEOs or people that run these companies are able to command a lot of attention, a lot of respect, and a lot of money. And sometimes that's more powerful than the actual product that they make. And I think Tesla is riding that wave right now. They are doing things that other companies aren't doing. They're new. So that's always exciting because people love startups. They love that investment. I don't think it's reflective of their long-term viability. You know, Toyota or GM specifically. GM's huge, but would you say GM's more viable long-term than Tesla? I mean, you have to have a crystal ball. So I think a lot of it is just they're really, really popular. They're doing things that other companies aren't, and people just are dumping money into them. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. What else we got? We're switching from an ND1 to an ND2. Not if you already have an ND1 and you're upside down. If you already own it and you can trade basically the same, yes, it's worth the upgrade. Used to live in Schaumburg. I used to get high on Gulf Road right by the mall. Yeah. I used to go to Tower Records in Schaumburg all the time and just go in and basically do nothing because there was nothing to do. And I remember going there in winter. Like, that was the only thing that I liked to do. I'm like, oh, I can go walk around and look at music. So that was my Schaumburg experience. Can you do an in-depth review of Cars infotainment? Are there emulators? Can you review without the actual car? No, you can't really actively export infotainment and emulate it at this point because most of these systems are proprietary. You probably could get some leaked. Even then, it depends on how the stuff's developed. Like, if it's every company has a different base OS that runs it, so like Android Automotive, that's going to be a different emulator or a different development platform than if you're running, let's say, like QNX, right? So it wouldn't be easy to do that, but I could technically do an infotainment review of like 4 or 5 cars and talk about what is good, but it's hard. You can't really benchmark them other than like objectively or subjectively, like, okay, how many taps does it take to get to the audio menu? But then again, what screen are you in? It's a good idea. I just would have to think about how to do it. Industry consolidations and mergers, Ford and VAG. I think it's going to happen. I personally think there's going to be some companies that aren't going to survive after this. There's too many products, cars and everything else. There's too many products. There's too much shit. There's too much consumer goods. The companies are going to have to consolidate to survive. Do you think Mazda will eventually put a turbo on the 3? Also, do you think they will bring back the RX-8 to compete with the 86? I don't think they're going to bring the RX-8 back, personally. And in terms of the Mazda 3, well, they won't bring the RX-8 back because I think what they're going to do is they put all their money in the inline 6. They put the inline 6, their co-development with Toyota and their new rear-wheel drive architecture is going to kind of take the place of, I mean, it's possible they could put a rotary in there, but it will be on this new architecture. They're not going to develop anything else because they don't have any money. And in terms of the Mazda 3 getting a turbo, I can't tell you that, but I would say they've put a turbo on everything else. What else we got here? York Razorbacks 2015 for $9.99. Do you think Ford using the Bronco name on a budget crossover like the Bronco Sport was a good idea? From a business perspective, yes, because they can get out cheap. From a brand perspective, no, it's not. I think certain, you got to remember when the Bronco was popular, it's got the nostalgia connected to it. So this current generation of car buyers have no idea what a Bronco is. They have no idea. So Ford or any company has this ability to be like, oh, we can make it whatever we want. Like maybe even the marketing team that's doing it never drove the original Bronco. So I think you have to kind of take some of these rebranding exercises with a grain of salt, that they're never going to be like what they used to be. And a lot of it is just chasing the name. People know the name. So it's easier than creating a brand new brand for something. And I talked about this a long time ago with Honda when they did the Insight. When they relaunched the Insight, they came up with a hybrid. They're like, oh, we want to release a new hybrid because that's what everybody else wants. It's not really the original Insight, but we're going to call it the Insight because that way we don't have to come up with a brand new logo design or a brand new marketing campaign. People know the Insight name, and it was cheaper to do and easier to do. And I think that's why a lot of companies just basically reboot these brands, these like models and monikers, because they don't have to remarket people to get the name out there. Anyway, that was too long of a rant about that. Think about it. Hi, from Germany, Mark. Do U.S. OEMs already think about ramping up production? I am aware Ferrari ramping up this week in Maranello, and also Audi, their engine block production in Hungary. It depends on capacity and orders. Every OEM is going to be in a different situation, depending on how much surplus in stock they have and how much need there is. So you could have an OEM that really runs razor thin, like they only set aside a certain amount of inventory for a certain product, and they keep that window there. Some will run more lean, some will have a bigger surplus. So I don't think it's indicative of really anything restarting or rebooting yet, because until all manufacturing's back, you won't be able to see what's happening. And I think you need to start seeing people buying again. Until those numbers are up, I mean, I think it's a moot point anyway. All right, let's get on to some more questions. I'm going to drag this out another 10 minutes because I'm sure people are just snoozing by now. Do you think the Mazda 3 is happening? I'll answer that because I know more than I should about this stuff. I don't think Mazda Speed, I think internally they believe in the Mazda Speed brand in the US, but it's not a global brand. It's not a global moniker that can be used in all markets. And they are choosing not to use that name based on the current direction of the company. So, like, if you see, you might have hotter versions of cars that would might have a Mazda Speed name, but it's not going to be used. That's really all I can say about it. All right, Genesis GV80, yay or nay? I don't know. I mean, it's a great platform that it's on. It's a really great platform that it's on. It's another SUV. I'm sure it'll be competitive with the other luxury cars, and it'll be cheap once it depreciates. But it's actually got a good buy-in price. If it's gonna be like the G80 was, it's going to compete with it's going to compete with the X5s because that's a decent, really good all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive setup. And I think it'll ride really well, comfortable, and quiet, which is what a lot of people want from a car like that or an SUV like that. What is the black and blue things behind you? Those are 1-inch foam boards. So they're basically they're designed. They're basically acoustic panels designed to just reduce reflections and echoing in the room. These are not designed for room treatments to make the perfect acoustic sounding room. I have a media room where I've been kind of doing like 3 or 4 inch foam and putting them where they're supposed to go for music. So that's different than this. I just have these in here so it's not as echoey. Let's take a look at some of the some more questions here. I'm running out of steam. Big fan of your channel. Only one question. Is Jack your son? I had Jack when I was 12. And he's been a great kid. Great kid. I tried to sell him. I tried to sell him at a couple different points in his life. And it just didn't work out. A lot of people just fell through. And now I'm kind of stuck with him. And, when he looks at me every day and he says, Dad, I want to sit here out in the freezing cold and film the Chevy Equinox in the snow. I've never been so happy in my life. It makes me wish I would have sold him even more. So that's the story about Jack. What else we got? Specs of your editing workstation. Okay, since this is tech related, right now I'm on a Precision 7740. It's got I should have the spec stuff. So it's got 4 NVMe drives in it, 1 OEM, and then 3 Samsung 970 Pros. It has the NVIDIA Quadro. Let me pull this up. It's got the Quadro RTX Quadro card, the 5000, RTX 5000. It's got the Xeon E2286 at 2.4 gigahertz, which goes up to like 5 under boost, which is so marketing bullshit. It's got the 4K Sharp display calibrated. I have a 4K external Dell display that's calibrated. I have the X-Rite calibrator and all the software related to that, along with the Dell software. It's got 64 gigs of ECC RAM. Really, I think that's it in terms of laptop tech. I mean, I will have other Dell equipment that I'm going to be testing now going forward. But yeah, this thing it's really, really serious. Obviously with 8 cores, and I found this more with editing stuff. I had a 4-core i7, and it was fast as hell until you started doing 4K editing, and then the processor would get overwhelmed. It would just be at 100%. So having the 8 cores, yes, it generates a lot more heat. There's a lot more thermal issue, like trying to keep it cool. And then the RTX 5000, is like it's just a frying pan. But the system does a good job at keeping it cool. So I can do pretty well 4K gaming. Like I play Call of Duty. It does that pretty well at, I can't kind of keep a frame limit at 60. Editing is really smooth at 4K 10-bit with it, so that's a lot. I've done some 3D, like Adobe, like 3D rendering and 3D stuff with it. I mean, it's like the most powerful workstation, one of the most powerful workstations that you can possibly get. But it's funny, like when I do my Dell video, the retail, like the retail on this thing is like $12,000. It's like, it's unbelievable how much, which, I didn't pay that, but, like when you look at the MSRPs, you get the sticker shock because they're selling it on the business side. So if you go through the business side to buy it, you're not going to pay that. But a lot of people talk about why would you do a laptop or a workstation laptop over a desktop? Well, the thing is, I can take this anywhere and edit anywhere, as long as I have a power outlet, and I can edit 4K. I don't have to downsample. I don't have to do any of that stuff. Literally, I can do whatever I want and wherever I want, including gaming. I can do audio design, 3D design, anything that I possibly can want, I do off this laptop without being tied to a desk. And I think, and it's color calibrated display, all the things that you get in a workstation. And because of the warranty aspect of it, you get US support, but for this machine, they pretty much say you get same day hardware. So if I have a problem with the graphics card, and this is my old Precisions, the NVIDIA cards would smoke themselves. They'll literally just burn themselves out. I had techs come out the same day. I called or went online, started a chat. They'd be out within 3 hours to replace the graphics card wherever I was at. So it's the same thing with this. And for me, what I'm doing now, like if I have to get a video done, I'm basically have 2 days to get a video done. This is the only way I make money. Keep in mind, I make money off this stuff. So if I'm down for a day and I can't get a video done, I have to go to my old machine. If I'm out of town, it's just deadly to me. So that's why, this is super important to me. Anyway, let's get on to the last batch here, because I said I was going to cut off at the 30 point. Any thoughts on the Cybertruck? Yes. My thoughts on the Cybertruck is, can I help you? Hold on a second. My assistant just let me know that there's a guy outside with a lawnmower and he wants his money. So I'm going to answer my last couple questions here, and I'm going to have to cut this off. I'm sorry to do this to you, because I know this has been one of the most deepest, most passionate discussions that we've ever had. All right, so the Cybertruck, I think it's vaporware. Until you see the production version, don't get excited by it. There's so many things that are not legal based on current regulations in terms of body work that they cannot do. I want to see what it really looks like before I get excited by it. And then the whole thing with the body structure, good luck making that body structure, the what is it technically, stainless steel on the side. Mass producing that? All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. Tesla reviews, again, that's coming in the next 3 months. The G80 is one of the best vehicles. It definitely is one of the best vehicles for the price. Will you ISV or ISF calibrate my TV? No, I probably would not be the best person to do that. I can do this stuff, but I probably would not do a good job, because I'd rush through it and then everything would be all pink. COD name is Dezoris, Dezoris. Dan says, saw a Hyundai show a car that looked like a 911. Do you think that under Biermann and the Koreans will mirror the German brands, only reliable? Yeah. I think they're trying to move up market. There's no doubt about it. What they're trying to do is cement like an image for themselves. They're trying to be the value brand that's up market, and they're trying to kill off like Audi and BMW by offering more for less. And the only thing they have a problem with is brand reputation. That's it. COD, I never rage. I just know my skill level is to play modes where it's capture or basically team oriented tasks, because that's all I do. I'm not one to sit there and try to kill people. I will capture something and I will die about 6,000 times trying. That's how I play. You will see me running like a little rabbit everywhere. What's your kill death ratio on COD? My kill death ratio is horrendous because every time we play as a group on a maps, we win every single round because I'm objective focused and the other people that I play with are objective focused. But if you play me in team deathmatch, I will just be a corpse, my corpse being dragged along the whole map. I might as well just take my hands off the mouse and keyboard. What happened to your podcast series? I have not uploaded the last two. It's just a matter of time, and I have to upload them. You will see that back. I sold my lawnmower to Scott, so now I have to have somebody else do it for me. Geese, what's your daily driver? I no longer have a daily driver. I haven't replaced it since my Civic got totaled. What I was going to buy before the whole virus thing was a GSF, and now I'm holding off on that indefinitely. So I'll have to see. What happens. Did you see that new Toyota 86 concept? Yes, I did. I don't know how excited I am about it. It's going to be a Subaru turbo motor, I'll be honest. Hopefully it's better than the last one, but we'll see. I'm kind of like, those sports cars are really weird for me. I have to like drive them first to make a judgment. You can't judge a car like that by just specs. GSFs are really hard to find, surprisingly. If you do a national search for used ones specifically, there's not a lot. And the new ones, they don't. I mean, the prices are just, they're stupid expensive for what that thing is. So if you can find one in the 60s, you're lucky right now. There's just not a lot. Yeah, the RCF, I need 4 doors, sadly. I still have the S2000 and I have the Atom. And the Atom is actually at the manufacturer getting worked on right now. So that's going to sit there probably for a couple months. The S2000 needs work. I need to do the fender stuff because I went with a different wheel tire combo. Yeah, the GSF has the perfect amount of power and it's naturally aspirated with all the coolers. But anyway, I'm going to cut this off before the lawn care guys come in here with a shotgun and blow me away. I really appreciate everybody watching this stuff and talking and just commenting on here. I will be doing another live stream in 2 weeks. Wednesday, I'm going to keep it for Wednesdays. Next week, you'll see the first tech, like non-car related Tech Wednesday video. So just so you know, be prepared. It might be a little bit different. It's the first time I've done something like this. So I'm going to have to find my way with it. So that's it. Thank you. See you guys later. How do I turn this shit off now? Oh my god, I forgot I was using this. I could have done something cool as an outro. Oh, here we go, bro. Get ready for it.